First and foremost, thank you to the Solana Foundation for hosting this event in such an incredible venue. It's truly an honor to be on stage speaking with you all today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have no sense of time. I got in last night, bad decision. But today I want to be talking about the state of revenue on Solana. And so I want to focus on sort of two prongs of that, both at the application layer, so the businesses that are building on chain and generating revenue, as well as what that means for the base layer, so Solana itself. And when I think about that relationship, it kind of comes back to this idea of the everything chain. I think Solana has been called many variations of the blank chain, most of them not too kind over the years. But the everything chain is the most compelling thesis of a blockchain in my mind. And I would describe that pretty succinctly as being the hub for all of global finance. And so we'll dive into what exactly gets us there. But I want to kick things off by looking at the application layer. So in April of 2024, Solana overtook the pole position of becoming the chain with the most applications built atop of it that are generating revenue, and it has maintained that lead ever since. And when we look at the composition of the applications or the businesses and the sectors they reside in, it tells a very straightforward story of its trading. That is the use case that the users of 2025 have been excited about and participating in. Whether that's at the application layer and the trading and wallet side of things, so being like a terminal or anything that enables users to get a trading experience, whether that be the exchanges on spot or perpetuals. The asset issuers, so obviously Pump.Fund and meme coins have been the talk of the town for the last 24 months, or even transaction landing services that enable traders and users to have a better transaction success rate. All of these things have really catalyzed a couple core principles for Solana, and that has brought in users, assets, liquidity, and all of the components to build a viable ecosystem that has really excited developers to come build here and expand beyond just the assets of today and start bringing in the assets of tomorrow, whether that be more professionalized, tokenized equities, credit instruments, or other financial instruments, or whether that be continuing to innovate on the crypto native side of things with the ICM meta or things like MetaDAO bringing in ownership tokens onto Solana. And this relationship doesn't only exist at the app layer. For Solana itself, it's very interesting to see the impact of having a trading exchanges built on top of you. 60% of all transaction fees, so base and priority fees that occur on Solana, come from transactions that include a trade, right? So 60% of all transaction fees come from transactions that include a DEX swap, specifically on the spot side of things. This data is for the month of November, but the trend holds for much longer than this. And if you include perpetuals here as well, the number only goes higher. And when we zoom in on what that has meant for the base layer, prop AMMs, if you aren't familiar, we can dive into a quick definition, but I can promise you by the end of this conference, you'll almost certainly be tired of hearing this phrase. But real quick, prop AMMs are a DEX design iteration where market makers are able to provide proprietary liquidity and plug directly into DEX aggregators as opposed to having their own front end, and can service active liquidity management through a price oracle that responds to move the price of the pool without requiring a trade to pass through it. And these have been tremendously successful, especially over the last 12 or so months, where 60% of spot trading volume now moves over prop AMM rails. And when we look at how effective they are at avoiding toxic flow, which is the kind of the key to being a profitable market maker, you see that they are quite effective. So the top three prop AMMs are the purple line here, just took the average of their markouts over a 45-day period starting October 1st. And the green line here is the traditional DEXs, or constant product or concentrated liquidity AMMs. And we see on the Sol USDC pair, prop AMMs are able to perform at a much higher level because they're able to run flow segmentation and update their liquidity much more actively, and therefore avoid a lot of that toxic flow that has been harmful to LPs of the past. And when we look at that liquidity management, one of the most interesting things is how frequent they are able to do this. So 20% of Solana transactions today are from these Oracle updates. And that sort of translates directly into 175 transactions per second on Solana are being generated by market makers competing to provide users with the best price. That is what the everything chain is. And today this is on about 30 or 50 different pairs of crypto native assets, but you can imagine a world where that 10, 20, 50x's, and there's now 5,000 different assets that are traded on Solana, and market makers are competing to provide them the best quotes. And to me, that is a credible path to satiating the demand generated by the client teams. I think it was last Breakpoint where the idea of 1 million TPS really got exciting. And it's also interesting to note that while there are plenty of these transactions, they're extremely optimized and made to be extremely cheap, and that's why they're so effective at what they do. So those 20% of transactions translate to about 2% of total transaction fees and out-of-protocol tips paid to transact. And so when we look at putting this in the context of the base layer, Solana's 2024 and 2025, as this chart notes, is almost hilariously good in context to the previous couple of years. When we think about what has happened over that period, again, we see it has created this user base of users that are excited to be on chain and want to be on chain and want to interact with different applications and trade assets. And that happened in 2024 and was solidified as not a one-time event in 2025. But being pragmatic, when we look at this chart, there's kind of two things that jump out at me. One is the enormous amount of work that the client teams, Onza and FireDancer, as well as third-party teams building in the infrastructure layer as well, have done to do everything in their power to make the chain more efficient and more effective at landing and processing transactions. And the second thing is sort of the reality that if you look at the 6-month period starting in Q4 of 2024 and ending in Q1 of 2025, you see that is roughly 50% of all RAV generated over this 2-year period. And so when I think about, well, what is going to be the catalyst that pushes Solana forward from here, it's the idea of being the everything chain. Again, being the place where being the hub for all of financial activity across the world. That's every asset across every market in any type of financial instrument, whether that be spot, perpetuals, options, or anything else. Right? And I think to me, this is the most compelling value proposition for any blockchain to be going after. And Solana is continually putting itself in the position to compete here. And if this is achieved, I think the native asset of this blockchain becomes incredibly compelling because you can imagine if all of the world's financial activity is happening on Solana, as the economic output of the world increases, so does the transactions that happen on chain, and therefore the yield that the token generates, whether that's through a burn of transaction fees or a distribution of staking rewards. And that is what keeps me logging in every day. That is what keeps me coming back to the industry. And so I guess I would leave it here today with encouraging the Solana community to continue on the pursuit of being the everything chain. Thank you.